Hello and welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 2, Episode 5. This is a Kickstarter backer curated episode. Thank you to Christian Bickley for backing at this level so we can review The Laundry Files, a very, perhaps the most British role-playing game, even more British than Warhammer Fantasy.
Suck it, Pendragon!
I mean, maybe, yeah, that's really the debate for this season is what is the most British role-playing game? Because we do have Warhammer Fantasy, we have The Laundry Files, and then we'll have Pendragon. So you, the listener, will get to decide ultimately. But The Laundry Files is a role-playing game that was put out by Cubicle 7. It uses the Call of Cthulhu role-playing system and is based on the Laundry Files series of novels from Charles Stross, which is a slightly comedic take on the Cthulhu mythos. The idea that magic is a form of mathematics and therefore computational devices can be used to cast magic spells, and Cthulhu is real, and also the British bureaucracy is perhaps the only thing more powerful than Cthulhu, as you play as members of a secret British bureaucracy known as the Laundry, because it's a cover. Again, British humor coming in. And you go out and fight the Cthulhu mythos and stop it and protect the United Kingdom from existential threats, occult threats, especially as the apocalypse case Nightmare Green is coming within 10 years. And so you have to be prepared for when Cthulhu wakes up and starts eating everyone. Yeah, it is. I've read the novels. I have the role-playing game. This game is currently out of print, not only out of print, the license is no longer available to Cubicle 7, so they can't even sell the PDF anymore. So you'll have to find a used copy, but I bought it when it was out because I like the novels. And this is a very interesting game to talk about, both what it does with the Call of Cthulhu system and the themes of the game. But I am not the expert in this game. James, you seem to have a bit more on me in that regard.
I have some insights. The last time Christian backed one of our Kickstarter backer episodes back in season 1, he asked us to look at a game called Outlaws of the Water Margin, an unpublished obscurity from the 1980s, early 1990s, which you two had never heard of, and I have a playtester credit in. I don't have a playtester credit in The Laundry, but I've known Gareth Hanrahan, who wrote it since the 90s, and I've known Charles Stross, who wrote the Hugo Award-winning stories since the 80s. So you're authoritative that it's pronounced Stross and not Stross. It's Stross. Yes. Now we know. Now you heard it here first, folks. Yes. Well, he's Charlie to his friends, anyway. We were in a writers' group together in the late 80s, early 90s, which I could digress about and bore you rigid about all the famous people I was in workshops with who wouldn't know me from Adam. But Charlie and I are in irregular contact still. I spoke to him actually about the Laundry RPG. It is The Laundry rather than Laundry Files. The novels are The Laundry Files. The role-playing game is just The Laundry.
Sorry, my mistake. I will have to rename the. I'll have to make sure the episode title is correct.
Yeah, Ross, get on that.
I do have a history of renaming RPGs on my podcast. I think there's an Adam Scott Glancy scenario that I've recorded that he called Dig 4 Victory. I called it Dig 2 Victory. And that's what I put on the podcast. So that's what the scenario is called now. So,
Well, I guess that shows who has the power. You or the jabroni who just wrote it.
Yep.
So what's interesting for me about... Charlie is a role player. Or he isn't these days, but he used to be. In fact, he has an august history within role-playing. He created the Githyanki, which appeared in the Fiend Folio, the AD&D follow-up to the Monster Manual, and became one of the core races. He wrote them as, I think, a 14-year-old, sent them into White Dwarf magazine, where they were printed. I think they paid him a $5 for it, and are now one of the underpinnings of the entire D&D multiverse. And there's I can't remember name of the other race that goes alongside them.
Githzerai, I believe. Yeah.
That's the fellows. He did them as well. So he knows roleplay, he understands roleplay. He doesn't, as far as I know, roleplay these days, but it's a field that he is familiar with.
Another aspiring young writer creates something, gets paid a fraction of what it's actually worth, and leaves the field to write fiction. A tale as old as time, or at least stretching back to the early days of Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely. Well, I think the thing is the name, the Githyanki, I think comes from a C.J. Cherryh short story. Yes, I know, but what do 14-year-olds know about that in the early 1980s? Anyway, in the afterword to the first Laundry Files novel, The Atrocity Archives, Charlie actually talks a bit about influences, and he talks about two in particular. Obviously, H.P. Lovecraft, because this is not just Cthulhuid entities, this is explicitly the Cthulhu mythos, which explains why the thing was produced under license from Chaosium and uses BRP for its mechanics. But also the novels of Len Deighton. Specifically, his series written in the 1960s almost as a riposte to the James Bond novels. The Bond novels, of course, very glamorous, very glittery, this world of spies with unlimited expense budgets. The Harry Palmer novels, as they're known, although the hero in the novels is never named, is the secret agent as a member of the British Civil Service. They must fill out expenses reports. They must fill out timesheets. They are under the thumb of the bureaucrats. Mm-hmm. Played brilliantly in 3 movies by Michael Caine, and then several decades later, less brilliantly by Michael Caine in 2 more movies. But the Ipcress File, the Ipcress File, Funeral in Berlin, and $1 Billion Brain. Now, those with long memories will remember that season 1, I think episode 3, we did Night's Dark Agents. Is it not, or Night's Black Agents?
Black Agents.
Night's Black Agents. And we finished that one up by you asking, Ross, what we would do with this system. And I said, I'd take it back to the 1960s. I'd do the Len Deighton novels, but with vampires as the bad guys. Thinking that there wasn't actually a role-playing game of that, completely forgetting that the laundry existed. Because that's pretty much what it is. It is, you are occult investigators powered by the government, with government resources at your fingertips, but you're under the thumb of bureaucrats and petty office politics, and all of the ugly side of that. And last time we were talking about Red Markets, which is a horror game where the bad guy is capitalism. This is a horror game where the real bad guy is bureaucracy and office politics, and that's really interesting, and also the source of a lot of the comedy as well.
It's interesting that. Were you done, James?
I was just going to say it is fantastic to put people in the middle of a combat, on a freezing cold beach at midnight, and they're firing eldritch weapons at each other, and your phone goes off, and it's Michelle from accounting wanting to know if you used 3 or 4 boxes of paper clips last week. It's a great way of punctuating, puncturing or punctuating a narrative, putting a really interesting spin on it. Great.
So it's for the question of what the laundry does is it adds comedy bureaucracy to Call of Cthulhu. And if you are asking, does Call of Cthulhu really need comedy and or bureaucracy? I felt it worked pretty well without The Wire or The Office in the blend. This is probably not the game for you, and you probably don't care that it's out of print and unavailable. But that's what it does to me. It's, okay, we're going to take Call of Cthulhu and we're going to add in these variant strains with a side order of nerd shit. Because, the Cthulhu mythos is one brand of nerdism. Math and computer science is another highly dominant one. And so this mixes those two together, and often to good effect. I feel that I've always enjoyed the people who take the mythos into the science horror category where I think Lovecraft often wanted it, if I can ascribe motives to him, is that he did want things to be very scientific. And so the part in what's the other Cubicle 7 game, Trail of Cthulhu, where Ken Hite goes Pelgrane. Whoopsie daisy.
Well, Gareth worked on both of those.
There it is.
Yeah. Gareth is in tight.
But where Kenneth Hite goes off on, this is just, seen through a mystic lens, it's Azathoth, the all-devouring chaos. Seen through a scientific lens, it's that giant black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And, they are both terrifying, all-devouring, unknowable, forces that literally put limits on your knowledge. But one is, phrased scientifically and one is phrased occultically. And this does a lot of that. The Case Nightmare Green thing where it talks about, okay, yes, the stars will be right, is how you say it, if you're writing in 3rd century Palestine, and our solar system is entering a region of space that is different from the one we are leaving, is how you phrase it in the scientific paradigm. And I really find those kinds of bisociations to be compelling and fun. So
Yeah.
The novels are really smart. I mean, Charlie Stross's big reputation is for big ideas and clever ideas. And that really comes through in the Laundry stuff, which I think is why they've done as well as they have. And Gareth captures that really accurately, I think, within the role-playing game. That sense of this is smart people up against threats that they essentially have to outthink. This is a game of outthinking. Like Trail of Cthulhu, it's a game of investigation and deduction rather than a game where you come up against things with weapons and try and fill them full of holes. Call of Cthulhu has been trying to do that since the early 1980s. And we all know what happens when you go up against a Cthulhu identity with a Tommy gun, which is, it wraps it round you usually.
Have you ever heard Scott Glancy's explanation for the use for the very detailed descriptions of firearms in Delta Green, rather, where he's like, yeah, these are basically as effective against actual danger as Linus's security blanket. He's like, and it never fails. He's like, you can never not bait characters. You can never not bait players into sending their characters into a terrible situation as long as you promise them a good enough gun. And it's like, and they're like, oh no, I don't want to raid that compound. What if I equip you with a sniper rifle? Well, maybe. And a flamethrower in case they get close. Well, I guess I could raid it. He's like, it's like Scooby-Doo and those Scooby snacks. They just can't... What if I gave you 2 Scooby snacks? So, yeah. And this moves that into, okay, well, you don't want to go up against the Shoggoth with a gun. What if you had a Hand of Glory that shoots lasers?
Yeah. Which is described in the equipment section. In fact, in the novels as well, particularly the early ones, the Hand of Glory as a device for invisibility comes up an awful lot, and you can supercharge it and use it to fire lasers as well. It's cool. And the great thing about Charlie and Gareth is that they justify this stuff. They make it sound like it's plausible. It all feels like it fits together, like there's a coherent universe view.
I'll also throw, it wasn't just Gareth Hanrahan, it was also John Sneed, who I've known from way back. And who is the third author? The third name I did not recognize, and I feel like I'm probably going to do them a disservice.
Jason Durrell's on the cover.
Jason Durrell? Wait, no, I do know that name.
I know Jason.
Is that?
Yeah, he's a Chaosium stalwart. He's
okay.
Chaosium for ages, and has worked on a bunch of other things.
Yeah. Well, no, that name I know, but let me see if there was...
Well, I'm just looking at the front cover, the ones that made it to the front cover of the book. So you can tell this game is a product of its time. It was published in 2010. one of the things is this is before 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. This is before Delta Green, before the two big known forks of the Call of Cthulhu BRP system. And this is very much like 6th edition and earlier Call of Cthulhu stat blocks and mechanics. And I am just now, it just makes me more grateful for the new and revised like Delta Green, like opposed roll mechanics, like other like quality of life like revisions to mechanics, because this has like the resistance tables to it for opposed rolls, which is like, oh, if your skill is 60% and your opponent has a 45%, that's a 15% differential. So look it up on this chart to figure out what you need to roll to defeat them in an opposed roll.
Which could be worse, but could be bad. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there, well, back in my day, we used the resistance roll table, and we liked it. It worked great. And don't give me any of this newfangled shit where you reverse the tens place and the ones place. That ain't natural.
Yeah, and then like crits are like 1/5 of your skill, which so it's like something that like it just slows down the game of pace. But like other than
enough.
that, but other than that, like the real mechanical, so the base mechanics are Call of Cthulhu 6th edition, but what they add to the game are the bureaucracy and computational magic stuff, which are really interesting mechanics and very thematic. As we were talking about the Hand of Glory, that is statted out, and there is a lot to do. But that's later on. But like that's the basic game of how it does what it does.
It's worth saying the mechanical stuff in here is, I mean, it's straight BRP text. I suspect it's the Chaosium text approved by them, because there are tonal shifts in the bits that were written by Gareth Hanrahan, John, and Jason, and the bits that were not. And the mechanics and the character generation and everything is just straight, flat, quite dull, almost 80s-esque in its tone, with the tables as well. And I had forgotten that BRP had so many tables in it. And BRP, when it came out in the late 70s, early 80s, to power RuneQuest originally, one of the first generic or semi-generic systems was a revelation, skill-based stuff, some really clever ideas behind it. But in this iteration, is looking tired. It's looking old-fashioned. It's a non-narrative system. It's very numerical, and there are very few nods within this book towards the stuff that was going on, like the player-led narrative, failing forward. I don't think gets a mention.
It does do something interesting in that like skill rolls are based, like if it's easy you double your skill percentage, if it's average it's at base, and then only if it's hard you get difficulties. So characters do get a lot of skill points to make that, so they can be very skilled but they're still relatively fragile, which I think is sort of like the optimal, like if you're making a horror game you want characters to be able to do things so they can get into trouble, but you don't want them to be too durable. You don't want a D&D character with, ablative layers of hit points. You want someone who can take 1 or 2 hits and then they're down, or suffer an injury or something.
Competence and doing things are overrated, says the co-author of Unknown Art.
You want for games like this, you want tomatoes, not potatoes, as player characters.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good way
That's
to look
nice.
at it.
That's very
like
good.
that.
I do have to put in what has now become my traditional rant about you saw it. You saw it. Both of you saw it, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And
how could I
the
not?
future tense, it was in there, and I'm like, damn it, John, Jason, Brian, you were supposed to be the chosen ones. You're better than this. So that was deeply disappointing, and but now I've done the rant. We should just do a canned one, Ross. We should just, I can record one, and then you can speed it up to like double speed, and we'll just drop it in whenever a game pulls it out of me.
But one day we're gonna find that magic RPG that doesn't do it, and we gotta keep this bile going, so that one day when you find that your pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, we can have that moment recorded.
Did 1,000-Year-Old Vampire have it? I don't think it did.
Okay.
Did The Quiet Year have it? I don't think it did. I think they were pure.
Yeah, that's been a while now, hasn't it, Greg? It's been a while.
It's been a long dry spell, Ross.
Yeah.
My traditional gripes about layout go unspoken here. Cubicle 7 put together good-looking books. This is a good-looking book. The columns are nicely balanced. But one thing
could you rephrase that more leeringly, James?
I'm not
Check
going to
out
leer at this book. This is not
check
a,
out
it's
the
not a
columns
sexy layout.
on there.
It's a utilitarian layout. It works. It does the job. It sets the atmosphere. What it does really nicely are bits where it drops into in-world documentation. So a lot of the descriptions of some of the Cthulhuid entities, and particularly the groups of Cthulhuid entities, like the Deep Ones, who are known as Blue... it's not Blue Nemesis,
Hades.
Blue Hades.
Blue Hades. That is presented initially as a laundry file, a file from the archives of the laundry with appropriate design and typography. And I've seen quite a few British government documents. It doesn't quite nail it, but it gets close enough.
It's like the government stuff in Delta Green. They set a really high bar for that, and I love to see people reach that bar.
There's a lot of really cool layout elements. Like a lot of the illustrations are set up as like photographs that are taped in, like with little bits of tape at the top. Then there's like the beginning of security. The security chapter is like set up as like it's a sans serif font. It's set up as a document. Then you have little handwritten notes throughout the document. I think,
although they only used a handwriting font instead of having someone actually handwrite it, which I'm like, come on, I'll handwrite it for you.
Yeah,
that's a shame. And these are supposed to be from Bob, who is the narrator, the first-person narrator of the Laundry Files novels, which is a nice touch.
Yeah.
Although Bob, as with Harry Palmer, Bob Howard is not his real name, and he says that very early on in the first book because, of course, Robert E. Howard is not his real name. Charlie does a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of references in there. I suspect many of them are jokes that only Charlie will enjoy, and a select few others who spot them. But part of the joy of a book like this and a game like this is spotting the Easter eggs.
I would be very unsurprised to find out. Like, this reminded me a lot, the layout of the book and how it approaches this, like with the in-game stuff. The Dresden Files RPG, if you've seen that, it does a very similar thing where the RPG is actually written as a role-playing game in the Dresden Files universe that some minor characters, forgot their names, sent to Harry Dresden, the wizard detective titular character of the series, to like proofread and like edit for like accuracy. And so there's a lot of back and forth and notes, handwritten notes and that kind of thing.
How far back does that go? What was the first game that is like, oh, I am both a game and an artifact of the universe? Because I know it goes back to Nobilis did it, right, James?
Yep.
De Profundis did it really well.
Yeah.
But does Castle Falkenstein do it?
I was going to say Falkenstein.
And that was probably the first.
I think so. And I'm not sure it's consistent, but certainly an awful... Oh, God, there's another one. It was called Murphy's World.
I remember that.
Oh, yeah.
It bombed. It was a humor game that wasn't funny. But as I recall, an awful lot of it was written in-world. It was an in-world document.
All right.
So this is a game that is worth reading, even if you never play. Like it is a fun book to read. If you dig Cthulhu Mythos, if you like, even if you don't like the Laundry Files, there's such a lot of really cool ideas. A lot of interesting stuff in there.
How many of our listeners? Okay, listeners, if you hear this and you haven't read the Laundry Files and you go on to read the Atrocity Archive and Jennifer Morg, I think I read maybe the first 2 or 3, and after that they started to lose me. Or if you go read A Colder War, which is associated but apparently not an actual Laundry Files story, but oh man, it's so good. It's so good.
You can see where he was thinking. Like it was written before Laundry Files, and you could like. I'm guessing Strauss wrote A Cold War. Was like, wait a minute, I could do something more with this, and then we got the Atrocity Archives. I read the first 8 novels. I haven't read the newest one because it's like a pastiche of Peter Pan if it was mythos, and I was like,
Is this a bridge too far?
Like when they did superheroes, I was fine. They actually did a vampire, a take on vampires in the mythos, which I thought was actually really cool, and you could do Night's Black Agent with that take on vampires. Very well. I've been like the one set in America dealing with a megachurch that's really a cult. That was great. And
a megachurch that's really a cult? I don't know, man. That sounds fake.
That may be pushing it too far.
Yeah.
I could accept a lot, but I think my suspension of disbelief can't quite carry that freight, Mr. Strauss.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to flashback here. Doodaloo, doodaloo. In the late 80s, early 90s, when Charlie, before he'd had novels published, he was having short stories published, as were a bunch of us. He had the reputation within the writers group that I was in and the writers' workshops. He was amazingly fast as a writer. He would bring 40, 50,000 words of something to a workshop, and we would critique it. And normally, at this point in his career, we would go, Charlie, you really need to work on your characterization. Your characterization is not good. Everything else is brilliant. You can't do characters. They all read exactly the same. They're cardboard. And he'd go, oh, okay, great. And he'd come back a month later with 50,000 words of something completely different, a completely different project. And he'd thrown the old one out. So loads and loads of ideas and really fast. And then I think about 92 or 93, something clicked and he worked out how to do characterization, and the novels started coming out, and he is amazingly prolific, still amazingly prolific. Which is interesting. Again,
those little sighs you hear are the sounds of jealousy bubbling up and escaping through my lungs.
100%.
Yeah. It's because Gareth Hanrahan, an interesting choice to do this, because Gar, who, as I said, I've known since the 90s, since he was at university, his big break in the industry was going through the Mongoose supplement factory, where people were employed to write, as I recall, 2,500 words. It may even have been 3,000 words a day, every day. And that would be 5 days a week. And that was the job. And basically, it was real kind of that which does not kill us makes us better writers. Either you burnt out or you learnt the skills. And Gar remains amazingly prolific. He has a series of, I don't think they're best-selling novels, but I think they've picked up an award here or there, and they're great. And he is doing that alongside his
Has
very
the third
prolific...
one come out yet?
I think so. I haven't read it.
I haven't read the third one yet, but the first two, strong recommend.
Yeah. And his writing, again, he's polished, he's learnt the craft by producing enormous amounts of material, as my old mate Mark Gascoigne puts it. And I think either he got it off Neil Gaiman or Neil Gaiman got it off him. Your first million words are going to be rubbish. You might as well get them out of the way as quickly as you can. It took me well over a decade to get 1 million words written. Other people have done it a lot faster. And I think it shows. If you write that much consistently, you learn how to tell stories in a way.
I don't know that it has to be 1 million, but I do feel like every writer, I've worked with a lot of writers, and I'm like, there's this crust of bad writing that you have to penetrate. And some people have a very thin crust, and some people have a very thick crust. But I believe if you work at it, just about anyone can learn to write well. That it is not a gift from heaven above. It is a skill you can learn, like carpentry. And I'm sure there are people who are naturally gifted at carpentry and it comes easy for them, just as there are people for whom writing comes easy. But I also suspect that a lot of that is just, I really like doing it. If you were obsessed with carpentry from a young age and started fooling around with tools when you were 12, by the time you were 30, everyone would be like, wow, he's such a great cabinet maker and so young. Like basketball or writing or anything else. If you love doing it as a kid and don't quit, you'll eventually get to where you can make that your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
feel
we're
like
ready.
I've dragged us down a side road. I apologize.
Well, as long as we're going down side roads, but this one I think is relevant, and this has clarified some thoughts to me and brought them into focus that I'd been sort of juggling earlier, and I think both of you will have interesting responses to this idea, because what I want to talk about is is that horror is a big tent that people who do not consume a lot of horror think is a pretty small tent. But there is a big difference between The Exorcist and The Addams Family, even though I would put them both in the horror penumbra. The Exorcist and very serious works like we can all think of one. We can all think of those horror movies that are po-faced and somber. I'm watching 1899 on Netflix now, and it's got that no one cracks a smile vibe.
Hereditary.
And this is, horror about really eliciting your darkest feelings. But at the same time, inside the horror genre, there are tropes that have been used in the past to elicit these dark feelings and this confrontation with, the bleak sublime, but have gotten used to the point that we are comfortable with them, and now they are the trappings of horror, but no longer horrify. And this is Tim Burton's playground, right? This is horror as manipulation of a system of emblems. And you can see this super duper duper clearly. It occurs to me at just this moment in time in the Cthulhu mythos, where you have the stories about confronting your human insignificance, and then you have the Cthulhu plushies that are just, that's this cute symbol of cosmic indifferent malevolence. And, and I'm remembering the Pagan Publishing, the story about how Pagan Publishing knew this woman who made these. And at first they're like, no, we don't want to care. We're the serious mythos people. And then they realized how well they sold. And they're like, maybe we can sell these. Maybe in the interest of retaining fiscal liquidity, we can bend a little bit. And the Laundry Files is the novels. The Laundry Files slide back and forth along these. They mostly stay in the emblem area where it's like, oh, we're getting, we're talking about, horrific stuff, but it's something you can use, and it's something you have to write a bureaucratic report about. And then every once in a while, it's like, oh, but it's real.
Yeah.
Or, oh, but it's serious. And this is, the idea that horror, the dark feelings, and horror as a series of emblems that are often very funny are in opposition, I think, is false. Before we started recording, while we were waiting for James, we were talking about the works of Jordan Peele. And how what my favorite is Get Out, and I liked Us, and I liked Nope, but I think my order was Get Out, Nope, Us, and I think your order was Nope, Get Out, Us.
Yeah.
And that we're like, it's not because Us is a bad thing. It just seems like a more specialized, it's not a bad thing. It's just not our specific thing in the way that Nope was for you or Get Out was for me. And Us is also the one, as I recall, that had the most humor in it. There are funny bits in Us. There are also horrifying bits in Us. I mean, the first time the duplicate talks, I was like staring at the screen with my eyes all bugged out. And I'm like, this is very good acting in a very good scene. That's very well directed. And then there were funny bits. And then it would switch back. And I was also thinking about how Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right, is shocking and grotesque and scary. And at the same time, there are parts where it's just like, this is so bizarre, I don't know whether I should laugh or flip my lid. Where it's like it has transcended horror and comedy and fused them. It is, it's a transgression that you aren't quite sure how to resolve in your own mind.
Right. I mean, both horror and comedy are about transgressions. They're about violations of expectations.
And timing.
Yeah, and timing. It sort of brings point, like the Laundry Files are sort of part of this, sort of a growing subgenre or a subgenre in horror, which is about reinterpreting Lovecraft's work. Which in Laundry Files, certainly it has very particular ideas that we're talking about. Litany of Earth, Ballad of Black Tom, Lovecraft Country, both the novel and the HBO series, are all some examples of this sort of like reinterpreting, taking the idea of Lovecraft, of cosmic horror, of Lovecraftian.
Did you read Lovecraft Country, the novel?
I've not.
It's really good.
Yeah.
I've congratulations to Ruth Anna Emery's, author of Winter Tide.
Yeah, which is a sequel.
The first thing that comes up when you Google queer Lovecraft winter.
That's an accolade. Wow.
Yeah. That is Winter's Tide is a sequel to Litany of Earth.
It says it's the first one.
Well, that's because it's a novel. Litany of Earth is a longer short story or novella. I forgot how many words it is. It's on Tor.com. But basically, Litany of Earth is the prequel to it. And it's about someone who is descended from the Marsh family, from the Deep Ones, and grew up in a internment camp for the people of Innsmouth. And so it's dealing with the legacy of being, someone who is in an American internment camp. And losing all of their culture. And so it's like looking at it from the other lens, which is also kind of like what Laundry Files does in some ways. There's it really like, I think some of the most interesting horror are people who are taking instead of just retelling or making, like, what if Lovecraft did this? It's like radically flipping.
What if Lovecraft, but on a hot air balloon?
Yeah, not that, but like taking the idea of cosmic horror and just like, what if cosmic horror, but also like institutional racism, colonialism, or like dealing with bureaucracy, like the institutional.
Did you ever read Then Curse the Darkness? I can't remember who wrote that one, but it is. I love that short story so much because it takes
It does sound familiar.
Traditional Lovecraftian sort of and larger pulp fiction themes of these Europeans and they are like archetypal white savior pulp archetypes. Right?
David Drake
is that okay? And they've come to
I've read
Africa, and there are these cultists who are invoking Nyarlathotep to avenge themselves on the Belgians. And what this does really, really, really well, so kudos to the author, is it's like, in a lot of these stories, you're like, man, why would anyone go to some bleak, annihilating anti-god and say, well, at least this is better than the Belgians? And then it's like, here's some historical facts about how the Belgians behaved in the Congo. And you're like, okay, now I get it. Yes, if I was living under those conditions and I felt I had access to any form of redress, no price would be too high.
Yeah. So, James, did you have anything?
Not really, I have to admit.
Okay.
I was just going to say, when you were running through the litany of Cthulhu squeezed into places where it doesn't necessarily fit, Regency Cthulhu, which is coming out any day now.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations for reinventing Pride and Prejudice with zombies. with Pride and Prejudice and Shoggoths. I love the Regency. It's one of my favourite settings. I do not think the Mythos has any interesting things to say or do there. I'm sure it'll sell very well. I'm sure it'll be a delight to read. But there is
that a gaming thing, or is that
a
Chaos? It's a Chaosium product. It's coming out. I think it's launching at Dragonmeet, which, as I speak, is this coming weekend. Also launching at Dragonmeet, my new book.
Oh yes. I need to get me a copy of that. Yeah. But it's not going to be in the States until it's too late to get it for Christmas.
It's March. You guys are getting it. Yeah.
Man, this country is. We don't have socialized medicine. We don't have James's book. Yeah. We're just now catching up to Canada in terms of legalized weed. When did we lose a war?
You might as well just call down Nyarlathotep and you know.
Exactly.
I'm not going that far.
We should probably go back to the game at hand and talk about how it does what it does. Yeah.
Well, and I would say how it does what it does is more subsystems, which. And I'm like, I mean, for the time it came out, I guess that's what we were doing. But if I am playing someone who has to deal with a fiddly, mathy thing to get effect, I don't necessarily want to have to deal with a fiddly, mathy rule to get the effect. You know, it's like saying like, oh, okay. You failed your dodge roll, now I'm going to hit you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although, I do have some card game that came with an inflatable club where the point of the game is to talk like a caveman, and if someone mistakenly uses too many words or uses the wrong words, you get to hit them with the club.
Is it Caveman Architect or something? One of you's the foreman, and you've got to instruct the others. I'm aware of it.
That's not it, but it's something like that. I'm like, okay, but no, you could. Sorry, you failed your dodge roll. Whap, 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 whap. That could be fun for like the first couple sessions. After that, it would probably become very tiresome. And similarly, I'm like, you could set up a magic system where it's like, okay, yeah. You can get your effect. Just solve this Sudoku. As soon as you, the player, solve the puzzle, your character has figured out how to evoke their magic. And I'm like, that could be evocative, but I don't know that I'd want to do that for a whole campaign. And it does not make it easy to play a complicated character in an easy way. And this takes me back to the observation of 13th Age, right? Where it's like, okay, if you want to play the dumb slope-browed barbarian, it's very easy to play that character. It's like, oh, you roll 2d20s instead of 1 d20 and you take the good one. Congratulations. Whereas if you want to be the wizard, it's like, okay, you're going to have to make a lot of choices and do a lot of bookkeeping and a lot of careful thinking and weighing and keeping track of this and that. And I'm like, what if being the complicated wizard in 13th Age or the complicated mathematician, computer hacker wizard in Laundry could be modeled as easily as the 2d20 for the barbarians? Would anything be lost? Do we need to have system mastery as a requirement for competence in certain aspects of character where there is required mastery within the setting?
Yeah, that is sort of like the classic question, like how much do you need to master the system to be good at it?
Yeah.
Like in this game, it makes sense. I think it's thematic because like it's dealing with complex bureaucracies and like dealing with the inanities.
If you're a real nerd who wants to play a wild, magical, idealized nerd, enjoy your nerd shit.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, I think that problem of working stuff out within games in a way that's interesting and doesn't just default to rolling some dice. I think Metamorphosis Alpha was the first one that did it with ways of working out alien tech. And then the AD&D module S3 Expedition to the Barrier Peaks had, as I recall, a kind of a maze system or a flow chart for working out if you could work out how to use the aliens' ray guns, because they weren't just ray gun shaped; they were weird double shoulder mounted contraptions, deliberately so people didn't just pick them up and fire them. You had to work out how to do it. And video games have had this problem as well. BioShock, which is the poster child for ludonarrative Dissonance, with an NCE at the end. This fantastic atmospheric game of being in an Art Deco city run by mad libertarians where things have gone badly wrong, where apart from anything else, you most of what you're doing is running around firing bees out of your mutated hand, which rather undermines the political message. But you can also hack the kind of the vaguely clockworky security droids, security drones they're flying, and the system that the game gives you to hack them is Pipe Mania. If you're familiar with Pipe Mania, the very simple video game of linking up pipes from one to another, and it completely breaks the sense of immersion that you've got within the game. It feels utterly inappropriate. It doesn't, I mean, it works mechanically, but it does not work in any way tonally or atmospherically. So this is it's an ongoing problem that I don't think anybody has solved in a decent way. Players expect to be challenged to work this stuff out. They don't want the game mechanics to work it out for them. But at the same time, some people are going to be good at the puzzles, some people aren't. I spent 3 hours in a hospital recently for some neurological tests, and the main conclusion they came to at the end is, wow, you're really good at games and puzzles. It's like, yes, I know, I told you that coming in. That's my job. But that has told me nothing about the state of my brain. And I think that's exactly the same problem. If you're good at puzzles, you'll be good at working this stuff out. But it's making it enjoyable. That's the tricky thing. Neurological tests obviously not meant to be enjoyable, but role-playing games generally are. Nobody's done it right, or at least if they have done it right, I've not come across it. If you've come across someone who you think has,
haven't you played Rain?
I haven't. But I'd love.
Maybe that'll be the one.
I'd love to see a discussion of this on our Discord. We have a Discord, listeners.
We
By
do.
the way, yes.
Open to the public. Yes.
Open to anyone.
Open to the yes. We're gonna replace Twitter in this very narrow area of talking about game design.
So to get into the specifics for the laundry files, the biggest new systems they have, which again are just kind of added on, they're new subsystems for BRP. The biggest ones I think is actually requisitions, because one thing I do like the idea of is that because you're a government agent, you work for an agency, your gear is assigned on a mission basis. You don't have like a personal gear list. You can't buy a Glock in the UK and just bring it into the field, or let alone a basilisk gun. So you have to get it from your place of employment, or from the laundry, and you have to requisition it. And in order to requisition it, you have to first meet a certain skill threshold and then make a skill check. And if you fail it, then you don't get the thing. But you have
must
a budget.
be this competent to ride the invisible car.
Yeah, but not, and also lucky on the dice. But if you fail, you do have a budget which you can allocate to mitigate, which is from 10 to 100 points, and you can spend those on a 1-to-1 basis to turn a failed status check into a successful one. But if your budget for an important mission is 50. Or the biggest one is 100 points. So if you fail by a margin of 40, that for one roll, you just we really needed that basilisk gun. Hope we don't need the budget for anything else. So I think that was a bit of a mistake to make the budget so minor. In a percentile system, even 100 points over the course of a campaign, because you're going to be requisitioning multiple things in a scenario, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's end of mission accounting where you have to justify how much budget you spend, and then you have to spend budget on training, improving your skills. And I like that in theory, but I think this implementation is a little, it's lacking because it's so random, and there's no well, how about I get it, but there's a complication later on. Again, a fate point kind of thing, or I don't know. There's I like it in theory, and I like the idea of your agency gives you your equipment for the mission. That's what you get. That's what you have to use, because that could add a lot of interesting challenges.
And it's also not the problem of, oh, so-and-so got a randomly rolled +5 sword and is now the center of the party. And, with this, it's like, oh, no, that basilisk gun is going back in the vault as soon as you're done with it. We don't want those rattling around.
Yeah, and you got to keep it in good condition. If you lose your +5 sword of, zombie slaying, well, you're going to have to deal with that, and that's going to be a problem. I like it in theory. I think the implementation is a little lackluster. The other really new system is computational magic. So in the Laundry Files, you can do like old school chanting and making gestures and sacrificing people to do a thing magically, but that's really inefficient. If you and much more dangerous. If you do it with a computer device of some kind, it's a lot easier. But this gets really crunchy really fast. There's spell levels. You need to have a skill check. This reminded me of Shadowrun in terms of like how complex the magic system was, which the novels get very complex too. And I like the, spell failure tables and like just a lot of stuff. It just like, I wanted to run the laundry at one point. Because one of my regular players, Tom, he's really into monsters. He wanted, and you can play a ghoul in the Laundry Files because they let non-humans in. You can be a deep one. You could be because you don't have anywhere else to go. You're on our side, so we'll give you a job for life. But like, I looked at all these requisitioning and computational magic stuff, and I was like, I am not, even if I learn this, my players are certainly not going to learn this.
Ask for a different birthday present, Tom. I'm sorry.
So,
this Disneyland burned down.
Yeah. I could probably more easily hack this into the Delta Green system than I could run it in its own thing, by just hand waving a lot of it. But I mean, I don't know. Did either of you have any insight into the computational magic?
I did run a couple of players through the introductory scenario, which I have a couple of gripes with. But it works pretty well as an introduction because it is assumed that you've just joined the laundry and you are being sent on a training mission. Basically, literally to a training camp, to a village that apparently doesn't exist. It's been erased off all maps, except they give it the name of an actual village. And I know that because it's where I'm from. I'm not from the village. I am from the same county. Dunwich is an actual village, or Dunwich if you're American, is an actual village on the coast of North Suffolk. South Norfolk, the border there. And it really exists, and you can drive there. And it used to be a massive port, and then the river's silted up, and the cliffs eroded, and most of it fell into the sea. And it has amazing folklore that, you can still see the church down there. You can't see the church down there, but in storms you can hear the bells, and there's loads of ghost stories. Fantastic atmosphere there. It's very much the same area of the world that M.R. James wrote a lot of his ghost stories about. Oh, Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad is specifically set slightly further down the coast, but the same coast, the very bleak North Sea coast there. So they've taken this village and they've said, it doesn't appear on any maps, and it does. It does. Oh, and the other thing about actual Dunwich, as you drive in, there's a massive triangular sign warning you of a possible obstacle or something that you may encounter in the road, and it's a toad. Because they have seriously, it's like this 1.5 foot across sign with a massive toad on it, because there are toad spawning grounds there. But it's on the outskirts of Dunwich. It could not be more perfect. So that just put my hackles on. It's like, there's discongruity there. But the other thing was, I did just hand wave an awful lot of it, because the point of the mission partly is to introduce the players and their characters to the way the laundry works and all of the stuff it does with summoning magics and the way the universe is set up. And it's nicely structured in the way that all the stuff you learn along the way pays off in working out what's going on in the actual mystery and who's trying to kill you. And, if you've been paying attention, you will not die at the end. That's quite nicely done.
So John, Jason, and Gareth wrote a very competent adventure. Well, I mean, that seems like par for the course.
Well, there is, and this is a massive spoiler. The big clue, which comes a little too far in, you find a dead body in the undergrowth. You've been sent off on a run, a training run. you discover a dead body, and it's got interesting things in the pockets. And what the game expects you to do is behave like a Call of Cthulhu investigator and basically find everything in the pockets and treat them as clues and follow up on them. And what my players did was go through a couple of the pockets, find some ID, go back to their commanding officer and go, there's a body. And there's a specific box out in the adventure going, if people do this, then your adventure's basically derailed, and we suspect you should probably turn it into a power struggle. But that's what, if you were a newly commissioned civil servant, within a massively bureaucratic organisation, you would report it to your superior. You would not take the burner phone and call the only number that's in its memory. It's expected there's other people. So that they did exactly that, and it did derail, and I had to do an awful lot of fast pedaling to put a story back together. And it just about worked, and it was fun, and they thoroughly enjoyed it. But it feels like there are blind spots, and I think the overcomplexity, which I completely hand-waved. I did not explain all the technicalities of the stuff and how all of this works and how the summoning whatnots worked. Because we were playing it as a one-shot, they're never going to play it again. But not because they didn't enjoy it, but because it's thoroughly out of print and hard to find. I did feel there was too much It felt like an old-school role-playing game. It felt like a role-playing game from, I think I said before, the late 80s. It didn't even feel like a 90s game. It felt like a game from before games like Vampire. There's a lot of very crunchy kitchen sink stuff. Every eventuality, or almost every eventuality, is covered. There is a little attention, some nods here and there to running it as a narrative and creating a story rather than running it as a game. Not an awful lot, and nothing that's you would think of as even 21st century particularly. That's not to say it's bad by any means. But I think any modern GM is going to want to go through and change a lot of stuff before very few people are going to run it as written.
It's interesting your comments on the starter adventure for the laundry, because it reminds me, Delta Green has a starter adventure called Last Things Last. And spoilers for that scenario. There's also a moment where the player characters have a choice to make. And in the case of Last Things Last, it is, they get instructions to go to this cabin, and they go to the cabin. They find a note that says, "Take the gasoline in the shed out back, and take it to the septic tank out in the yard. Open it up, pour the gas in, light it, and walk away. And do that." But they hear a voice in there and asking for help, and it's a woman's voice. She sounds like she's in pain. She begs for help, and so this adventure is like, if you just pour the gas in, I mean, she's obviously a monster. Like, and
if you do what you're told,
there's
win
no adventure.
Too fast.
You win. You did the thing, and you're fine. But if you rescue her, and she attacks people, it's a very and it turns into an actual scenario. So like, it hinges on that one decision, and which is a bit of a tricky thing for the GM to get the players to take the bait without being obvious about it. But that's the thing about the laundry. Like, and there are a number of supplements for it, which again are all out of print. But like, there's some very interesting stuff in them. Like, there's one that I have called God Game Black, which takes events of the third novel, which the Fuller Memorandum, which is about an off-world site. There is another dimension that you can get in through a magical gate. And there's a bad thing in the gate, in this world, and it's going to wake up. And if it wakes up, boy, is it going to be bad. And the player characters have to, and in the novel, the whole thing is about making sure the thing that is asleep stays asleep. The supplement talks about this area, and I really like that idea, because that's not really explored, right? Opening gates to other worlds and it being horrifically in Cthulhu mythosy. Still bureaucracy's doing it, so they map it out and they have to deal with mission logistics and that kind of thing. But I really like this idea of Stargate, but it's Cthulhu mythos, and because it's going to be horrifically bad for everyone who goes through that gate. But you got to do it, because it's even worse if you don't mess with the thing off world.
It's the least bad disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the disaster we chose.
So there's tons of stuff to use for other horror games you could put in there. You could actually, yeah, like I mentioned, do Night's Black Agent in the Laundry universe because they have a version of vampires, and it's a very clever idea of like, oh, like the thing in the Laundry universe is that if you do magic with your head, i.e. casting spells the old-fashioned way, your head gets eaten by extra-dimensional worms. You're basically burning yourself out to alter reality. But vampires, if they bite someone and drink their blood, they sympathetically link to them, and then whenever they use magic, it hits their victims instead. So they can stay immortal and do horrific things and superhuman things and their victims are the ones that are going to waste away and die horribly because they're vampire. And yeah, so that's how you explain a vampire, is that it's someone who's offloading all the consequences of using magic onto other people. So they get to be an immortal sociopathic sorcerer. And
this is somehow reminding me thematically of red markets again. What if there was this horrible class of people who got their victims to deal with all the blowback from their selfish decisions? Wow, that would be a real nightmare, and they'd be monsters and nobody would love them. Good thing that doesn't happen in our real world.
I also do want to mention, just looking through the magic section again, they have a list of tomes, grimoires, and magical texts, as every good Cthulhu Mythos game should have. The sand laws, how much mythos you gain, how much sorcery you gain, and what language it's in, how long it takes you to read. And among, between the Vermis Mysterious and the Weird Tales collection, they have the Art of Computer Programming Volume 4, which costs 1d4 sanity to read, and boosts your computer programming skill. So I thought that was I thought that was fun.
I mean, one of the lovely things in the novels, and I think in the game as well, is that the Laundry recruits an awful lot of its people by people in the real world who have accidentally discovered the the Donar curves, which is the mathematical formulae that lead to the construction of these curves, which are the curves that essentially warp space and create portals and effects and stuff like that. And the guy who originally created them was Alan Turing, or discovered them first of all with Turing, later killed by the Laundry, which is the moment that an awful lot of people will sit up straight and go, oh, so we're not the good guys. No, you're the necessary guys. But people have been rediscovering them ever since. And of course, as computing power gets further and further, they're being discovered more and more often. And, the two things that the Laundry does with these people is either eliminate them or invite them to join the Laundry. And there's there's lovely stuff around that as well. You have to sign Section 3 of the Official Secrets Act, which is itself, Section 3 is an official secret. The only way you can find out about it is once you've signed it in blood. And things like that. It's clever and beautifully set up. It's a really interestingly structured worldview. There's a bit, I mentioned the afterword, in which Charlie talks about his relationship with H.P. Lovecraft and Len Deighton and the novels, and why the novels of the two are similar and dissimilar. But he also says that as he was writing it, he was advised not to read two particular texts, one of which is Declare by Tim Powers. Powers, of course, known best for the Anubis Gates and multiple award winner. Declare is his espionage novel, his post-war espionage novel, which deals...
Is he best known for the Anubis Gates still?
I don't know.
I mean, he's written so much good stuff. Yeah. I mean, Declare was certainly really well received.
I don't know.
That might be his best. Well, no, On Stranger Tides is probably his best known title.
True, yes.
Because he sold just the title to Disney.
Yeah, it's true. But anyway, so one of them is Declare, and the other one is Delta Green, specifically, which he, I believe, has now read. And I could quite see that the two exist in the same universe, that Delta Green is over in the States, where, for whatever reason, the American equivalents of the Laundry have fallen apart or failed to operate, or perhaps have been infiltrated, or whatever you want to do with it, while the Laundry is over in the UK. And there may be interactions between the two. I think you could do something really interesting, potentially, with that.
Oh, yeah.
Crossover.
There is one of the later Laundry novels does talk about the Black Chamber, which is the main American occult agency, and they're described even from the beginning as, inhuman, very mysterious, and doing all the things the Laundry, basically the dark mirror to the Laundry. Like the Laundry, it crosses line that the Laundry doesn't. Like a bigger thing that comes up in the later novels also is the use of magical compulsion, mind control stuff. Like you mentioned, like the oaths, the codes that you sign, so you cannot reveal secrets. There's a lot more of that in the later novels. But yeah, it's a fascinating setting, and I hope I may just skip the Peter Pan novel and pick up the next one whenever that comes out.
You're not going to be a completist? I do want to know about the vampire. The vampire one's good, you say?
Oh, I liked all of them, yeah, except the one I haven't read.
Peter Pan.
Which
you haven't had a chance to like yet. But what's
I
the title
tried
of the vampire one? Oh, you tried. Okay.
I bought it on Kindle and got in 20 pages. Like, I do not care. Let's see here. Yeah.
I think the one that got me was the one that blended in the James Bond mythos. It's like, oh, by this spell, I'm going to partake in the archetype of the James Bond, and now I will be like James Bond. I'm like, this seems a little navel gazy to me. It feels like you're getting kind of circular there.
Yeah.
But that's just
I can't
me.
remember the one exactly. I suspect an awful lot of the stuff in the book is in the role playing game is there because it's in the books. I didn't feel there was an awful lot of new invention or creation of new materials within the game.
Well, of course not. It's a licensed role-playing game product.
It is, and it's very faithful, and it does a really good job of that. And I think whether or not you know the Laundry stuff, you would enjoy reading the role-playing game. But it does mean that if there's a throwaway gag reference to the spell that makes you like James Bond, and I haven't read them all, I'm not familiar with that particular one, then it ends up in the role-playing game where it may or may not be usable, but if it's not in there, someone's going to complain, and that is one of the perils of licensed role playing games. You've got to be faithful to the source material, and I think it does a remarkably good job that while still being. I said I wouldn't play it as written, but I did play it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd be up for playing more of it. It works as a game structurally, tonally. The counterbalance between the horror and the espionage stuff and the grinding bureaucracy works as well as it does in the fiction. It's a really nice piece of work.
Yeah, the thing it wants to do, it does really well. If you want to do that thing, you'll like it. If you don't want to do that thing, move on, no blood, no foul.
Mm-hmm. I think if they ever get the license back, or they'd shoot, like, the licensing issue I found out is not because of the Laundry files. It's not from Strauss. It's from Chaosium. They lost, Cubicle 7 lost the license to use the Chaosium Call of Cthulhu system. So if they figure out a solution to that, and they revise the requisition and the magic rules, I would definitely want to play this. The bureaucracy rules, because again, those rules were just too clunky for me to get into. And by the way, Greg, the novel you're looking for is the Rhesus Chart, book 5 in the series.
The Rhesus Chart?
Yes. It's about investment bankers becoming vampires.
How can they tell?
So,
maybe? Okay.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a little on the nose there.
I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards.
There are whispers that there may be attempts to bring the game back in some form. I cannot say more than that because I don't know any more than that, but there are whispers, let's put it that way. I think both sides would like to see it back. It's a fun game. It's a good product. Sure. It I hope makes the relevant people some money.
You'd have to bring it up to the modern
it would.
The problem I noticed, I was not going to say the modern technology of role-playing game design so much as the references where they're like, there's this amazing thing called the 3G iPhone. And I'm like, oh buddy,
yeah, doesn't need to be
we're a couple G's past that now.
Yeah, like I mean, UK's no longer in the EU. Like, there's actually, oh, this is only one government in the larger European Union. It's like, well, about that. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Or a lot
This
to
is the
revise and
problem
update.
with writing stuff set in the modern world or the modern-esque world.
Mm-hmm.
It's, man, reality moves fast.
Yeah, Francis Fukuyama turns out to be wrong. History just kept happening; it never ended.
Yeah. He was, in fact, on a British Current Affairs programme last night saying basically that. Yeah, one other thing. This is more of a gloat than anything else. You said, I think, Ross, you've read all but one. No, you've read all but two, because there's a new novel, and I have a copy of it, and it's not even gone to the publishers yet. So the advantages of having known Charlie for so long. I will report back. But
okay.
But yeah, and I think the final thing I want to say is,
you heard about it here first, Charlie Strauss fans.
I think if anyone had suspected there wasn't going to be more laundry material, it's fun, it's popular. I think he finds it very enjoyable to write. But I think the only other thing I've got to say is that Gareth Hanrahan actually does a remarkably good Charlie Strauss impression, which is not an easy one to do when you're talking about somebody who has idea diarrhea. His stuff is so thick with interesting concepts and interesting uses of technology and twists on things. Gareth is able to get his head around that and produce it in a role-playing form in a really interesting way. And I am still waiting for the Gareth Hanrahan masterwork. I think he's got something really big within him. I'm not sure. I like the novels. They haven't changed my world. But, he's served his apprenticeship several times over.
Have you read Eyes of the Stone Thief?
Oh, God. My memory's doing the memory thing.
The 13th Age campaign.
No, I haven't.
The 13th Age Living Dungeon. Because I haven't read it either, but, when people talk about Gareth Hanrahan's best work, that seems to be the thing they're like, oh, like Eyes of the Stone Thief. Right. So, I don't know. I'm thinking of Junji Ito, who burst onto the scene with Tomy, and I feel like Uzumaki is his masterpiece. And if we've seen Hanrahan's Tomy, I would be very curious to see what his Uzumaki is.
Yeah. He's certainly a very impressive body of work already. Like a lot of his Trail of Cthulhu material is great. I think he did the Final Revelation, which is one of the most bleak, purest campaigns I've ever played it. Like it is dark. It's very good. I believe Final Revelation is him. Let me double check.
What are you going to do if you find out it's an entirely different writer?
I mean, yep, and it is. It is Graham Walmsley and Scott Dorward. Yep. He's an effect now. There's a Gareth Hanrahan effect. Anytime you read some good British Cthulhuid thing for gaming, you're going to think, oh yeah, that was, who was that? It was Gareth Hanrahan, right? And every other British Cthulhu writer's going to be like, actually, no, it was me.
Actually, no, Gareth is Irish, which makes him an
that's right.
person to write a book about Britain and the British Secret Service and all its failings and foibles, because he has the externality to be able to look at us without feeling a part of us.
But still close.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, Graham Walmsley is it Walmsley or Walmsley?
I think.
Walmsley, because he was Cthulhu Dark, which, I remember being quite favorably impressed by that. And I'm like, he has really cut this down till he hit bone and then stopped. And it's, a comment I've made over and over again about the works of Thomas Ligotti, right? Mm-hmm. Is that Thomas Ligotti does tone really well. And moreover, is ruthless, I feel. I suspect maybe he just does it naturally, but I'm like, there's nothing in those stories that doesn't serve the tone. It's like, what's the plot? The plot is the minimum amount of events that support the tone. What's the setting? The setting is the simplest setting that supports the tone. Everything is slavishly yoked to tone, and it's a great decision for him because his tone is so good. I mean, when it's that good, anything else just becomes drag on the aerodynamics. And I felt that's what Walmsley did. Walmsley, damn it. I'm never going to get that straight. But when I was reading Cthulhu Dark, I'm like, this is very much, it's the least you need, but it's not missing anything you need. It's this sleek thing. But we've digressed from the Laundry Files, but not a big digression because, we're talking about games that do Cthulhu.
Yeah. Gareth's biggest Trail Cthulhu thing is Cthulhu City, which is an excellent book, which I've not... I've played a bit of it, but not a lot. I quite enjoyed it. He has an upcoming Fall of Delta Green campaign coming out, the Borelius Connection. That? New York, 1968, the United States Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. So investigating drug dealers in New York City in the 60s.
But really, it says the 60s, but it's coming up on the 70s. And man, the 70s in New York City was nasty.
Yep. Also, Fear Itself, which second edition. Which I love. It's a great, one of my favorite, probably my single favorite Gumshoe game because it's so open-ended and has some really interesting and unique monsters and ideas in it. He's done a great bit of work.
He's a hard-working guy.
Yep. But anyway, The Laundry. It's a great game to read at least and steal ideas from.
Good read. Yeah, I don't think I'd play it as written. I thought that the GM advice and player advice was very solid. Some of it was quite basic, but it was presented in a very... it's in a persuasive way. It's not clobbering you over the head, but it goes down easy. It's not a jagged little pill. It's a smooth little brew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's one of the games I've read the most of it. Out of the games that I have read and not played, it is definitely one of the ones I've read the most of and enjoyed
the closet drama game.
Yeah. James, any final thoughts?
I think we'd be remiss if we spent an hour and almost 20 minutes talking about the Laundry Files without talking about the bit of it that has become a meme that occasionally goes around on social media, which is the section from its What is a Role-Playing Game thing, which I still feel, and there's arguments about this, I still feel role-playing games should have that. You cannot assume that everyone who reads your game is going to already know what this game is. And it's also a useful useful place where you can say what is different in yours. But this one, I will read the little example of play that's there. He says, it goes something like this. Player, I open the door to the next room. GM, you see an orc armed with a battle axe guarding a chest. Player, I enter into a frank and meaningful dialogue with the orc, validating his right to guard chests, but not pigeonholing him into a stereotype, in the hopes of restructuring the traditional adventurer-monster antagonistic relationship into something more positive and mutually beneficial. GM, roll 1d20 against your charisma skill. Player, I succeed. GM, the orc is moved by your rhetoric. Casting his battle axe aside, he sits down on the chest and invites you to join him in a brainstorming session about ways to revitalise the decaying subterranean infrastructure and society of the dungeon, perhaps with a player. While he is distracted, I stab him with my sword. And it is lovely. It subverts the whole thing. It does its job. It's a cute piece of writing. And it comes right at the start of the book. It sets the tone masterfully.
The tone is wry without being labored. It handles... I wouldn't say it handles it with a light touch, but with a good touch.
Yeah, and that gives you a sense of the tone it's going for.
Yes. It's snarky, but not unbearable.
Mm-hmm. It's a fun game if you can find it, and worth reading. And again...
everyone out there is going to be like, wow, thank you for showing me what's so great about this thing I will never find, never read, and never own. Thanks, guys.
Well, apart
Thanks.
from 2 people out there who are, as we speak, listing it on eBay with a 3-figure minimum.
Yeah, and certainly there's no possible way to find the PDF anywhere. It's definitely disappeared from the internet. Don't even bother. I'm sure it's gone. So thank you all for listening. Especially thank you to Christian for supporting
Thanks
this and
again,
choosing
Christian. And this, yeah, you really could have stuck us with something dire, but you've been picking stuff that's good to read, fun to read. So thanks for that.
Excellent taste in role-playing games.
Yeah, no, this is really good. And it's really good to bookend this with our next episode, where we'll be talking about Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. To find out, so we have seen the past of the BRP system. Let us see the future. Where is Cthulhu going now, or Call of Cthulhu going now?
Yeah, where is Cthulhu going now is an entirely different question.
Yeah,
I think he's heading towards New York.
Yeah, well, you know,
poor old New York.
If you can make it in New York, you can make it. So, we'll be working on that episode, recording that later this month, we'll talk to you all.
Not later this month, later next month.
Well, by the time you listen,
By the time you listen to it, it'll be this month. We're running into the relativistic effects of podcasting. Sorry, I retract.
And if you're not listening to it next month, who knows what you're going to be thinking. And
we'll be recording it several months ago.
Yes.
If you're part of our long tail listeners, if you have a long tail, then there may be a role within the laundry for you.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.
With that, on that note, yes.